Welcome back, welcome back. Got a hot topic here, especially for myself personally. This is going to be my prediction on how House of the Dragon is going to conclude at the end of 4 seasons. Let's get into it. So, what I have here, I've rostered out the armies and dragons and assets that both sides have. I'll weigh in my opinion on what contributions they'll make to each cause and what I think the outcome will be when season 4 concludes. So let's get into it. So the Greens, they made this pretty clear throughout season 2. The Greens definitely have the stronger armies. The obviously the Westerlands, the Reach, the South. They have the Storm and Crown lands. Free Cities, that's more of a navy, and obviously the City Watch. And that includes entities like the Kingsguard, the House Guard of the Red Keep, and so forth. Then for dragons, I don't know why I thought they had more than four, but as of right now, they have Dreamfire, Vagar, Tessarion, and it sounds like Sunfire is still alive. Kristen Cole mentioned to Allison that they left him at Rook's Rest because like his wings got seared off. So I'm assuming he's alive. He's just grounded. So this is clearly a more pragmatic military setup. You know, I think Aemon said it at some point in a small council meeting. This war will be won by dragons flying behind armies of men. So they're clearly living up to that brand. And then the black team has, again, their army is considerably smaller put together. They have the North, the Riverlands, the Vale and the Erie, and Driftmark, which again is like that's their navy. And then dragons, I mean, obviously they're loaded. They have Cyrax, Caraxes, Vermithor, Silverwing, Vermax, Sea Smoke, Moondancer, and I'm assuming Sheepstealer because Rhaena found him at the conclusion of season 2. I mean, I'm assuming she's going to fly back south, abandon the ship heading to what was it, Essos to Prince Regio, and she's going to join the fight. So it's pretty sick. So breaking down each team's army. So the Greens they technically have three navies because it's mentioned that the Lannisters have a navy, the Hightowers have a navy, and now they have the Free Cities, which is they're only getting a navy. Obviously soldiers as well, but that's their forte is sea combat. And then I don't know the exact count of men, but when you put together the Stormlands, the Crownlands, the South and the Reach and the Westerlands, it's well over 50 or 60,000. I think Jason Lannister mentions he was bringing 9 or 10,000 men with him alone. The Hightower host is over 20, and then you obviously have the Baratheons leading the Stormlands, the Reach. Uh, I'm adding the Reach, assuming House Tyrell joins up with the Greens, because it was leaked that the Tyrells will be in season 3 and season 4. So I'm going to act like they're a part of the Greens' cause. And then obviously they have the two of the three biggest dragons alive right now, Vagar and Dreamfire, Vermithor being the second of the three. And then Tessarion, who it sounds like he's about the size of Vermax, which is uh, Jace's dragon. So I mean, uh, Daron is gonna. I don't think he's gonna contribute a ton. And then obviously Sunfire. Assuming another battle heads to Rook's Rest, I don't think Sunfire is gonna be doing anything. So I just had him on the list because he's still alive. And then for the Blacks, their army is really centered around the Riverlands. They have, it was mentioned several times, they have 40,000 swords put together. Probably less now because of the Brackens and the Blackwoods civil unrest. I would imagine those casualties were within the thousands. So we'll call it even 35,000. And then Driftmark, which is obviously contributing a navy. and obviously soldiers as well, but I don't think it's a ton. They have the North, which is sending Krieg Stark said 2,000 Greybeards, and then the Vale and the Erie are sending 15,000. But those are quality knights because the Knights of the Vale are notorious for being like the best trained troops, the best trained army in Westeros. And then obviously dragons, they not only have quantity but they also have quality. You know, Vermithor is considered the most brutal, aggressive dragon alive right now. The Bronze Fury is his nickname. Caraxes. Uh, Cyrax is obviously she's loyal to Rhaenyra, but I don't think she's a super valiant fighter. She's not a very big dragon. And then Sea Smoke, who seems very aggressive. Obviously, he burned Stefan Darklin when he tried claiming him as a rider. Moondancer is still pretty small. Vermax is obviously very small. Silverwing is pretty big. Was it? I don't know if it was. I think it was Ulf that claimed Silverwing, and Hugh got Vermithor. Silverwing is a decently sized dragon. You know, we don't know too much about their combat experience. And then Sheepstealer is just a wild dragon. Uh, Jane Aaron mentions that he's formidable and wild, and he's been in the Eyrie since the start of the Civil War. He's just looking for food, so hence the name Sheepstealer. But he looks like he's war ravaged because the close up we got of him at the end of season 2, his wings were tattered, his tail was cut up. So, you know, is he fighting other animals? Are there other unknown dragons out there that aren't introduced in the show yet, or maybe won't be at all? But he looked pretty beat up. So, I think this obviously I think this war is going to be the detriment to most of these houses' armies. You know, obviously, as valuable and godlike as the dragons are, they're one and done. You know, like Meleys is a perfect example. She was large, she was experienced fighter, she was quick, but she died. You know, she had one battle against Vhagar and lost. You know, with armies, it's deaths by the thousands. You know, we saw just at Rook's Rest alone, the Greens lost 900 men. You know, Cole almost died, uh, and that was when Gawain Hightower took over the charge into the keep of Rook's Rest. So I mean, just looking at these lists alone, it's hard not to pick the black team to win, especially the way that season 2 was left off. You know, Aemon and Vhagar got rebuffed at Dragonstone. He went to burn Sharp Point because he was mad about it. They're all the momentum is shifting. They have the Dragon Riders suiting up. Alan of Hull. They have the still shots of like Hugh and Ulf putting on their armor. So, you know, strictly off of that, it's hard to pick against the Blacks, even though their armies leave a lot to be desired. But I still think, and again, this isn't biased. Obviously, I am in preference of the Greens. I just don't see how the Greens lose, assuming, you know, Otto Hightower comes back. We saw him at the end of season 2. You know, he might take up a tactician role, advising, helping command the Hightower host. I think there's too many valuable minds that the Greens have that the Blacks are lacking. You know, even as of the end of the last episode, you know, Daemon and Rhaenyra they're still kind of going back and forth, and then, you know, he bends the knee and he swears fealty again. It's just, he seems detached from her cause, and it's kind of like he wants to lead this rebellion on his own. So there's a lot of unsuredness there. You know, with Aegon being out of the picture now, you know, you could say that's one less conflict that will happen in the Red Keep between him and Aemon, which is what I do feel. I think now that he's gone, if anything, that helped the Greens' cause, because now that's one less obstacle Aemon has to worry about. So my prediction is that the Greens will end up winning this. You know, I think based on the way the pacing of the show's going, everything is going to pick up Like I do think the first episode will be seeing a very big war or a battle, excuse me, and I think that they're going to try and drag this out for 2 full seasons, even if they're only 8 episodes. I just don't think the Blacks have the numbers to keep up their efforts. I just don't. I think the Greens have more money, more resources, more men. Obviously dragons they're lacking, but I don't know what Dreamfire looks like, but I know she's a large dragon. You know, Rhaenyra said she was hatched during Aegon the Conqueror's reign, so she's old, she's experienced in battle. Obviously Vhagar is about as unkillable as you can get. So, I think all the dragons that the Blacks have, they're small. Aside from really it's Vermithor and Silverwing, their efforts just they lack what the Greens will bring in the skies, and obviously on land it's over. The Greens' armies are bigger. I think their generals are better. The Lannisters have always been a keen military mind, and now they're leading the push at the Golden Tooth towards was it Harrenhal? Now I think the biggest question is going to be whether or not the Greyjoys and the Iron Islands get involved, and whether or not Dorne does. Because I'm assuming the Martells are reigning Dorne at this point. Because I know Dorne is an independent country up until Game of Thrones. So during this war, they're independent from the Westeros proper, so to speak. So I think if just based on this list alone, I think the Greens win. But I think if the Greyjoys and or Dorne gets involved and favors the Blacks, I think then they can win. Because obviously with the Greyjoys you have a Western force on the seas. They can attack Casterly Rock, Lannisport, because they're north of the Westerlands on the Iron Islands. And then Dorne is the entire southern part of Westeros. They're a quick trip to King's Landing. They only go through I think it's the Stormlands, and then they're in the Crownlands. So I think that if there's some unforeseen alliance that will be brokered with the Blacks and Dorne, this is entirely possible to flip. But again, this could be my bias talking, but I do see the Greens winning this war. But I also think that I think Aegon will return and rule. I think he's going to go to Essos with Clubfoot, and they're going to reign in peace. So that's what I think. Sorry about that. Alarms driving by. Love that. But anyway, I do think when this war is over and when the Greens have won, I think Aegon will return and rule for however many years leading to whatever the next conflict may be. Obviously I haven't read the books, so I don't know what comes next. And I think ultimately Rhaenyra will be executed. I think Daemon will be executed. I think some of her kids and her, stepchildren might escape and, maybe go east, maybe go north. But I just don't see any conclusive scenario where they do beat the Greens. I just don't. But, there's 2 full seasons left. I could be just totally off the mark here. And, the show could prove me wrong. But I also am hoping that the Greens do win. So, again, it's bias. Whatever, sue me. So that's what I have for my predictions for House of the Dragon. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.